Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in a little bit of a different environment because the folks at Vevor reached out to me recently and wanted me to test out a product, and it's a little too big for the teardrop galley. Now, if you're not familiar with Vevor, they're a company that makes a lot of tools and home goods and some really cool kitchen items. And the reason they reached out to me was they wanted me to try out a product that they thought was very specific to my channel content. And the timing couldn't be better because recently I've been exploring the idea of creating my own meal rations, my truly homemade rations. And these folks sent me the most perfect item for what I'm doing, and that is this Vevor vacuum chamber food sealer. So I'm sure a lot of you that are into prepping and homesteading are familiar with these old school vacuum sealers. These things are a great resource, but there are a couple of downsides to working with these. One of them being that in order to seal the package, this device has to pull all the air out of it, which means that anything in liquid form or a light powdered form is going to be pulled into the vacuum mechanism on this device. So what's the advantage of a chamber vacuum sealer over one of these traditional sealers? The advantage is because the chamber in this food sealer becomes a vacuum. The vacuum pump built into it sucks all of the air out of it, creates a vacuum, and then once it drops the heat sealer onto the item inside, it returns it to regular room pressure, thus producing a vacuum sealed bag. And unlike the traditional sealers, it doesn't bunch everything up and create this wad of plastic and contents. So while this unit is more expensive than a traditional sealer, where you start to save money is with the bags that you use to seal. Now, this isn't meant to be a size comparison, just a materials comparison. So your typical vacuum sealer bag looks like this, and these tend to cost in excess of $1 a piece for these bags. If I just bought a pound of ground beef and I saved $2 on the ground beef and I spend another $1 on the bag to vacuum seal it, then that really puts a damper on the amount I'm saving when I'm buying things on sale or in bulk with the intent of vacuum sealing and freezing them. But the bags that this sealer uses are pennies a piece. So yeah, it's gonna take a minute to recoup the cost of the item, but if you're one of those people that is constantly vacuum sealing things for freezing or for what have you, over time, this is going to pay you back by buying these bags that run a whole lot cheaper. But concept is one thing. Now, I'm not gonna go into a bunch of details about how to put this together. I will tell you this, when it showed up at my house, I came back from a trip to find it sitting in my driveway, and the box was absolutely mangled. This thing had obviously gotten turned upside down. It had caused the oil to leak out of it. The box was damaged beyond salvation, but I will say that this came in remarkably good condition for something that had gone through that. This was not the fault of the company. This was the fault of the shipper that brought it to me and apparently just let it bounce around in the back of their truck. But it was shipped in a very durable box, so there was no damage to the unit itself. But there are a lot of videos about unboxing and how to put this thing together and refill the oil. And we're not gonna go into that because what I wanna talk to you about, more so than talking about things like freezing meat and whatnot, I wanna talk about applications for this. If you're homesteading, if you're a prepper, if you're an outdoorsman who's looking to prepare their own meals to take with them on trips, let's talk about different ways that we can use this device for those things. So basically the operation of this thing is that you can choose how long it vacuums for, which will determine the internal vacuum pressure. You can choose how long it takes to seal the bag, and you can also give it a cooling time before it releases the pressure in the chamber. The longer your pressurizing time, the higher the vacuum is going to be, which is going to directly impact the items that are in the package. So if you have something delicate like cookies, you don't want to put it on 45 seconds or a minute's worth of vacuum pressure, because what's going to happen is once it returns to regular room pressure, it's going to crush everything in the bag. But that being said, this allows me to adjust for that. So if I have items that are more rugged or more delicate than others, I can adjust that pressure so I get a good seal, but I'm not destroying the things that I'm trying to save. One of the things that I made recently was a batch of beef jerky. The jerky is super easy to preserve. You just put it in the bag. You're going to run it at about 30 seconds of vacuum time, and then just let the device do its thing. And then I'm left with this vacuum sealed bag of jerky that I can keep relatively indefinitely. Now, the thing you got to keep in mind with this is The more fatty the meat is, the faster it's going to go rancid. So while a good lean cut of beef should stick around for a good long time when it's properly vacuum sealed, if it's got fat in it, you're going to want to minimize the amount of time you try to keep it on hand. Next up, I had some dried apples. Now these I wanted to be a little more careful with. I started by dialing back the vacuum time for sealing these because I wanted to get a good seal, but I didn't want it to be too aggressive. So you just drop the apples in there, and then once I close the lid, it's gonna roll. Then once it's done, I've got this nice vacuum sealed package of apples. Now these are another thing, this is gonna last a good long time. There's no fat, there's no additives that have been put in here. This is just dried apples. So I should be able to keep this for months, if not years. Now I've seen things that say that dried fruit properly vacuum sealed, you can keep for up to 10 years. Of course, this is a clear bag, so light will be able to get to it. So probably taking this, throw it in a Mylar bag with some other stuff is a good way to go for that. Also had some dried bananas. Now the dried bananas were a little bit stronger than the apples, so I didn't have to worry so much about dialing that time too far back, but we got our little bag of dried bananas now. This other item, I really wanted to make sure that I dialed back the time because I made these sweet potatoes by completely cooking them first. Then I took them and put them in the dehydrator. And once they were done, they were very airy and delicate, almost like a honeycomb candy. And once I sealed it, I got this little bag of dried sweet potatoes. But they are extremely delicate, and you just got to make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on this and ending up with sweet potato dust. Another thing I was really curious about was I've got these Mylar bags that have a Ziploc seal on them. Now with my traditional vacuum sealer, I couldn't use these because in order to put this part of the bag in a position where I could get a vacuum seal that would still allow me to use the Ziploc, when I would put these in the sealer and close the sealer down, it would mash the Ziploc closed, and then I couldn't get a vacuum on the bags themselves. I wanted to try and see if this sealer could remedy that problem. So I put some stuff inside one of these bags, put it in the sealer. Now the bags are a little bit big for the sealer, but I was able to tuck it in there and get it properly positioned. And sure enough, once I got it cranked, it did exactly what I needed it to do. It sealed the top of the bag without mashing down that Ziploc. This is a great move forward for me. The ability to take these bags and properly vacuum and heat seal these things, this is what I've been needing. If I'm making individual servings of something like this dried fruit and I really just want to make it last even longer, being able to take it and put it in there and then vacuum seal this bag, that is a game changer for me. But I also wanted to experiment with something else. I've got these smaller bags. One of the things that I've run into when it comes to preparing homemade rations is that if I buy things in bulk packages, I don't really have the ability to reliably reseal them without impacting their shelf life. Once I open the package they came in, I immediately start that clock on how long that item is going to be good for. But then I started thinking, what if I could put things in bags like this and then vacuum seal them so that I can include them in my packs? And the fact that these have a Ziploc pack allows me to reseal anything that I don't use. And the fact that I've got multiple size bags, I could load this size bag up with crackers or something like that and be able to vacuum seal that without crushing the crackers and with having that Ziploc so that I can make it into more than one meal. So I wanted to try something out. So I took one of the small bags and I had a tea bag that didn't have an individual wrapping on it. Now, if you remember, I've talked before about buying tea bags that are individually wrapped because they're already sealed and they'll last longer. But if I don't have that available and I need to package up something else, or let's say I just want to take a single serving of instant coffee from a big jar and put it in something and take it with me on a trip, then I can seal up little bags like this and take them with me. But I need to test and see if this little bag is going to seal the way that it should. So I took my small size bag and I put a tea bag in it, ran it through the sealer, and sure enough, it worked as advertised. I've got this single tea bag in here. It's vacuum sealed. That is going to last for a good long time. And I don't have to worry about it getting affected by anything else in the kit. I don't have to worry about flavors bleeding over or getting any moisture on it or anything else that's going to shorten its life or just make it completely unusable. Another cool thing about this vacuum sealer is if I'm using this for things like freezing leftovers or something like that, or even if I want to create something like an ice pack to put in my cooler, I don't have to wait until that liquid is frozen before I can vacuum seal it. If I take a liquid and I try to put it through that traditional vacuum sealer, it's going to suck all the liquid out into the machine and it's going to destroy my machine. With this chamber sealer, I can take a liquid that has not been frozen and I can seal it as is. I can take this bottle of water, pour it into one of these bags. I can put it in the sealer. I don't have to do anything special. This works like every other item that I put in here. All I do is drop the arm down, close the top, and it seals up this bag of water. I can now take this and put it in my freezer or use it however I need to. And while I'm not going to go around vacuum sealing a bunch of water, you get the idea of what I'm talking about. Having to freeze things first so that you can vacuum seal them is just an annoying step in the process. And I've found myself several times putting something in the freezer and completely forgetting that I did that. And it's days or maybe even a week later before I remember I've got something in there that I was supposed to vacuum seal. Now it's already started along the lines of freezer burn. But outside of food and liquids, there is another way to use this device to your advantage if you are into the outdoors or if you're a prepper. And that is to vacuum seal items that you want to make sure stay dry. One of the things that everybody should have in their backpack or their bug out bag or whatever is a dry change of clothes, particularly dry socks. So while you're packing up your gear, you can take your socks or your underwear, put them in one of these bags, put it in the vacuum sealer, and now you've got a pair of socks that's not going to get wet no matter what happens. If your backpack gets submerged for days, you still got dry socks that you can put on your feet. You can do this with any piece of clothing, any piece of equipment, whatever you need. If you're going camping in a place with really high humidity, then vacuum seal matches, because matches don't take very long at all to start absorbing humidity out of the air. And then all of a sudden they become useless. So this thing's not just for food. You can take care of just about anything that needs to stay dry and protected. We've talked about all the good stuff that you can do with this. Let me give you a couple of negatives about this item. One is price point wise, this isn't for everybody. This is not something that you need to get if you are not somebody that does a lot of food packaging or prep. If you're only occasionally going to use something like this, then one of the old school vacuum sealers is fine. If you're a hunter or somebody that is constantly bringing home meat and needing to store it away, then this is a great piece of kit for you to have in your kitchen. The other downside other than the price is the size of this thing. It takes up a lot of space. You're going to have a designated area to put this thing up. It's not something that you're going to want to move around. The other downside that goes hand in hand with the size of it is the weight. It is extremely heavy. Every time I had to move this, I struggled with it. It is an extremely heavy and cumbersome piece, and you really need to have a dedicated space to keep this at all times. You're not going to want to have to move this thing every time you're done with it. But the more I explore the idea of making my own truly homemade rations, the more something like this is going to come into play. And then for day-to-day use, I love the ability of being able to package things that I don't have to pre-prepare, such as freezing liquids, before I can vacuum seal them. This is an awesome utility item for people that need it, but it will absolutely be in the way if you're not planning for regular use. Now, of course, the folks at Vevor have extended me a discount code. If you're interested in seeing how much this item is with my discount, you can follow the link in the description box and it'll take you over to their site and show you exactly how much this thing's going to cost. But I've got some more things that have got to get sealed, so that's a wrap for this one. And until the next one, prepare for the world that you live in, not the one you wish existed. And we'll see you around.